Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Another Dolphins podcast. Joining me today, as he does in every episode, is Joshua Houts. And Houts, to set the tone for today's show, you had a very relatable tweet this morning, man. I opened up my door, I was going out, getting ready to go to work. Boom! Slapped in the face by absolute football weather. It's beanie weather, it's hoodie weather. And I'm hyped to be talking a little Dolphins football, man. The season's here.
Yeah, the weather's shifting, and we now know it's football season's upon us. It's just crazy. I don't feel like it ever got this cold on August 20th. But my wife and my oldest daughter were off to the dentist. They said it was, beanie weather, hoodie weather. I got ecstatic because it covers up this rat nest. And most importantly, like you said, it means football's upon us. So we're one step closer, Jake, one step closer to the edge, and we're about to break.
August 20th, and we actually have a loaded show for you guys today. River Cracraft dealing with an injury that's going to keep him sidelined for a while. There is some more Tua Tagovailoa and Brian Flores back and forth. I think that's one way we'll call it. We'll also dive into some of our final thoughts from the preseason game, and throughout we're going to sprinkle in some of the rookies we're finally, Josh, we're ready to plant our flag on now that the preseason's winding down. But to start, we got to start with the injuries. We got to start with the bad news. Mike McDaniel reported on Monday that River Cracraft is expected to miss some time with an upper body injury. It will be sometime for sure. It doesn't appear to be season ending, but it will be sometime. Josh, even when you're saying something isn't season ending, the fact that we're saying the word season followed by ending is never, ever, ever a good sign.
No, it's never a good sign, and I don't like, seeing some of these tweets from River Cracraft, I'm going to bounce back. I mean, he's going to bounce back. You hear things like that, but it just seems more, grim than we might expect. And when you hear, Mike McDaniel time and time again in his injury updates, it's hard to sit here and not think the worst, but it sucks because River Cracraft was balling out, man. He was absolutely balling out. We heard Tua gushing about him. We also heard, like we said in the last pod, that he's going through some stuff off the field. So whatever that is now mixed with this injury, I just hope River Cracraft comes out of this like he always has and is a better player. Because let's be honest, man, he fit a specific mold on this offense that only River Cracraft could do, and he knew this offense like the back of his hand. Definitely sucks. But next man up, right, Jake?
Mike McDaniel said that he did some real good things in the game, talking about last week's game against the Commandos. And so when he's back, I expect him to be the best version of himself, just like we saw. He caught both of his targets for 29 yards and a touchdown on a 4th and 2 goal line fade. And Josh, that's partially what's so frustrating. We can't go super Pepe Silvia. We aren't doctors, so I'm not going to go too deep. But River Cracraft got hurt scoring a 4th and 2 touchdown on a fade, and it's a show. That's just such a frustrating development for the Miami Dolphins. Another thing Mike McDaniel said, Josh, Odell Beckham Jr. isn't expected to play or practice against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and when you weave that together with the fact that Willie Snead IV has been placed on injured reserve, who on earth is going to suit up this week, man?
Yeah, I guess it's Braxton Berrios season based on the way that sounds. I mean, it's yeah, he has to do something. It's now's his time for sure. I mean, it's not funny that Willie Snead's out, but I mean, when we signed him, I was kind of like, oh my God, I didn't realize Willie Snead was kind of still jumping around from team to team. Sucks that he's out, but like you said, man, now who's going to step up? We felt pretty strongly about this receiving unit. We're sitting here picking who we might end up keeping on the roster, who we might have to get rid of, and now we're just sitting here, hoping there's a healthy unit to go out there and play when it also comes together week one. So who's playing this week, Jake? I guess it's going to be Malik Washington and hopefully Braxton Berrios. I mean, Tyreek Hill has a brace on his hand. I mean, Jalen Waddle, you're not going to have out there at all. So I don't know who's going to be suiting up. It's going to be a lot of guys that might still be just going out there playing for their NFL career and hopefully, a spot on another team's roster. But when the season comes, man, we're going to wish we had River Cracraft, and it's definitely going to be Braxton Berrios' time to step up.
Miami Herald's Barry Jackson did report that Tyreek Hill was practicing with the brace on his hand. The key here is that he was practicing. So compared to someone like Jalen Waddle, who we've seen maybe on the sideline, Tyreek was on the field. So it's a tough time of the year, Josh. We're Dolphin fans. We are so panicky about every single injury, especially when you consider the way the last few seasons ended. But now more than ever, the Dolphins are being very safe with guys. So it sounds like Tyreek Hill will be okay, but something that we should monitor. Josh, before we move on, I want to play a quick game of maybe some way or absolutely no way. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go through the Miami Dolphins receiving depth chart, and I want you to say some way or absolutely no way that this guy is going to be on the Miami Dolphins 53-man roster. When you consider the injuries that the Dolphins are dealing with, I want you to really step in here. So if I was to say Kyrick McGowan, is he going to be on the 53-man roster?
No, no way.
Mike Harley Jr.,
No, I don't think so. No way.
Jaquan Burton.
He's been making some plays, right? I'm still leaning no. I'm still leaning no way. How many of these guys are we listing off that we have to keep? Probably like 3 of them at least.
Anthony Schwartz.
I see him up the depth chart a bit, and I see him, running behind Mike McDaniel, smiling. I want to say no way, but I think he's the first potential. What was it? What was it? Yes way potentially.
Yes, way maybe type of thing.
Yes way, kind of, sort of. I think he might be a yes, kind of, sort of as well. I think he's a more of a. I think him and Anthony Schwartz are probably in that next tier of they're probably not going to make the roster, but I could see a way that they do, right?
That is exactly what I was trying to squeeze out of you there, Josh, because I think that the Dolphins, just a couple months ago, we were kind of maybe debating, like, we thought, and we're big dumb idiots, we'll be the first to admit that River Cracraft might be one of the odd men out when you consider Braxton Berrios and his returnability. But all of a sudden, man, with these injuries slowly piling up, I mean, we had Taj Washington, Turbo Taj maybe in the mix as a 7th-round rookie. He's on IR. All of a sudden, man, it just kind of, when you zoom out and when you don't get caught up in the everydays of preseason, so exciting, I know, but all of a sudden, man, it's kind of crazy that we're sitting here and thinking, all right, I see a way that, a Braylon Sanders or an Anthony Schwartz could make the roster. It's weird to see how the preseason develops a little bit. And, man, we can't even move on. Someone we haven't mentioned yet, Eric Ezukama, man. He's looking awesome, and you dropped a nice little hype-up video on Twitter.
Yeah, I don't know if it's good or sad that, we're sitting here and saying some of these guys could be fringe players, but it looks like now, just like we're saying Braxton Berrios need to step up, it looks like Eric Ezukama gets a new wind. And every time he's out there, man, we joke he's a preseason god, but even he's out there, someone make me a cut up of all these awesome plays that I've done over the last 3 years. And let's see, what comes about. And it looks like a superstar if you just were unfortunately going out there and it wasn't like the 5th quarter. It was like, the AFC championship game or something. So we hope Eric Ezukama steps up again. He's at 6'2". Someone tweeted me and said his name's Eric as a comma, and that's how they spelled it, as a comma, and I just started laughing. So whatever you want to call him, man, he is going to go out there, and I think this will be that year we finally see him. And we still got to talk about Malik Washington, right? He's still lingering around a little bit. I saw Omar Kelly and his previous podcast co-host Alan Popar, they're kind of going back and forth over whether Washington was having a good camp, a bad camp, and some people think that, he could kind of fill in here with, some of these injuries. So cream rises to the top. Hopefully Mike McDaniel has a plan because, like you said, Jake, our receiving corp looked a lot better a few weeks ago than it does today.
I don't know how we want to go about this, Josh. So Tua Tagovailoa did an interview with Dan Le Batard, about a 15-minute interview or so, and I honestly thought it was a pretty great interview. I think Tua was really calm. He had a fun line. He's like, let's make sure Casey has to come here next year. One thing Le Batard made sure to say before playing the interview is that Tua was showing a level of confidence that he hasn't seen before. And I think that just kind of speaks to the idea of letting a player grow, letting a person grow, letting someone become the best version of themselves where they can somehow make $50 million a year. And you kind of see that growth and development from Tua throughout this offseason. But man, if you don't watch the interview, all you're going to hear about is that Tua had a line, it was about a 2-minute clip, where he kind of went into Brian Flores because Dan Le Batard asked him, hey, can you kind of walk us through the difference of what it's like playing for McDaniel versus Flores? And Tua, I'm cutting to the gist here because I think most of you have probably heard by now, basically saying that he kind of pelted him nonstop with insults. You don't belong here, you're not good enough. Jeff Darlington even reported, and this hasn't been denied, that, Flores was texting Tua the nights before games saying, hey, don't blow this. Different things like that. So a lot of reaction came out of that, Josh. So before we get into Brian Flores actually outing, he responded today, being Tuesday. But before we get into that, Josh, what did you think of the Le Batard interview and what Tua had to say specifically about Flores and those Dolphins teams?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I thought, and I guess Levitard mentioned, is just that new found Tua Tagovailoa that we're seeing, right? He looks cocky. I mean, even after he threw that touchdown pass to River Cracraft, whatever that dance that was, that little skip to my Lou thing. I mean, he's just a different player out there. The way he commands the huddle, the way he's carrying himself. So for me, I was a little bit surprised, I guess, that he was so blunt about it, right? I mean, he could have held back a little bit, like we've seen from Tua Tagovailoa in the past, but I think he is trying to become his best self by being himself. So he went out there and told it like it was, right? He said that if someone literally was telling you every day that you suck, how would that make you feel? And then someone comes in and is the complete polar opposite. So it goes back to a thing that I think a lot of us forget is that these guys are players, or are people. They're not just these superstars, these athletes that we all look up to. These are people too, down to the core. So we can all sit here and we speculate a lot of this stuff, but to hear it come out to Tagovailoa's mouth, to just think of how we felt about Brian Flores at the time. I know myself included. I sat there and said, if I at the time before all these things came out, I was still kind of siding with Flores. I kind of thought that he was a good coach. I sat into a lot of those pressers, and I felt like that guy that I thought, just based on hearing him as a person, it's clearly the complete opposite of that. So I like that Tua Tagovailoa finally came out and said the way he felt. And I'm excited to see the way he moves forward with this. Hopefully we don't have to continue to hear this whole Brian Flores saga going on. And hopefully, I think do we play the Viking? Hopefully they put an end to this. At some point the Dolphins just beat up on that Minnesota Vikings defense.
Tua just made a point to mention he wants to be ever growing, ever evolving, and I think part of that is mentioning how he felt that Brian Flores and that team was he was trying to grow as a flower in just a pot of cement. Right? It was just a situation that just wasn't going to work from him. And it really did feel like there was a line crossed where it was more than just a hard coach. And I think that's one of the things we're seeing, that there's a divide where people think that hard coaching, quote unquote, is just that hard coaching, that they don't really see that there could be a line to be crossed. And just trying to think about how this is going on, man. And looking about where Brian Flores came from, he was a Coach Belichick disciple. I mean, don't you think that think to the fact that part of why Flores sued the NFL is because he got a text from Bill Belichick where he was congratulating him for getting the Giants job, and then he said, "Oh no, sorry, I meant Brian Dable," and basically it was a roundabout way where Flores found out that he was interviewing a job that he had 0% chance for. Dude, I wouldn't be surprised if Belichick was sitting there all year just talking crap, and then we drafted Mac Jones in the first round. You guys can't be that smart. We had Tom Brady, and all of a sudden we got this guy coming in. And I could just see there being a scenario where Flores is getting so flustered and so built up. I'm not trying to justify anything here, but flustered and so built up where not only does he reach that line of being that hard-nosed coach like Belichick, but it goes over because he has to deal with this and just deal with the situation of being a coach. I think it's I'm at the point where you are, Josh, where I don't really want to talk about this anymore. I think as fans, in the last 5 years, I don't think a loss has hurt as much, just doom, gloom, dread, nothing. That Jags loss in London, man, was by far the lowest point for me, just having to come on this podcast and talk about this team. I'm so ready to put this away. I think Flores is a good coach. I think he is not wrong when he comes out and says he can relate to players and he's good and he was inspired to become a coach. But I do feel too that there was a line that was crossed, and in order to have good relationships with 53 players, you got to have good relationships with 53 players. You can't just pick and choose Christian Wilkins and Andrew Van Ginkel. Those are my boys. F everybody else. Get them out of here. That's kind of where I am after hearing all this, Josh. And not to be a broken record, man. I'm ready for it to be over.
Yeah, and I get not wanting to, necessarily cater to a rookie quarterback. I mean, we've seen, how that goes from time to time. I guess the biggest thing I think I'm starting to realize from this is how much that stuff we heard pre-draft and, throughout the whole Flores era, is actually true. We remember hearing that Tua Tagovailoa said pre-draft that I think his visit, he felt like they didn't even want him. That's how, taken back they were by him. And then later on, we continued to hear how Flores might have liked Jordan Love. We knew he liked Deshaun Watson. If Greer was, on that Tua board, maybe there was some clashing the heads there. And, I don't know how bad things could have unraveled. So I'm just glad that we're away from this, right, Chick? I'm glad we have moved on. We somehow lucked into Mike McDaniel. The Dolphins of all teams have lucked into the head coach that they have now, and he got the best out of Tua Tagovailoa. So everything that happened during that Brian Flores era happened for a reason. The Dolphins are better off for it. And, like you said, eventually Brian Flores will probably be a head coach again. And hopefully he's learned from him, because you're not going to be able to treat a rookie quarterback, you take 5th overall. destined to, lead this team to what we've seen over the last few years, and tell him he sucks every day during your Tuesday morning breakfast is when you're watching tape.
And like, there's a little bit of a divide here, Josh, because as someone who goes into my office job and I work 40 hours a week, I can't imagine texting someone that I work with off hours. However, 15 years ago, when I'm pumping gas or I'm working at a convenience store, boss is texting you all the time. Can you like? So I understand there's like a divide of like some people thinking it's like, oh, it's just tough coaching, but there's some nuance there where like some things are happening that just shouldn't be happening, whether it's a college atmosphere or professional atmosphere. I mean, I don't want to be the one that's mentioned that, hey, I don't know if you knew this, Tua played at Alabama under Nick Saban. Nick Saban was someone who would, I think there was a story by Yahoo where Saban challenged him to go lose weight in off season and Tua responded and all this stuff. So Josh, before we wrap up with this, I do want to go through some of the Brian Flores quotes and get your reactions. So on Tua calling him a terrible person, Flores said, "Look, I'm human," so that hit me in a way that wasn't positive for me. But at the same time, I've got to use that and say, hey, how can I grow from that? How can I be better? Do I feel like that's me? No, but how can I grow from that situation and create a world where that's not the case, that anyone says that about Brian Flores? Josh, that's what we wanted him to be for Tua. We wanted him to just let Tua grow. And when you're sitting there melting this stuff all the time, you're not letting him grow. So there was some reaction from Vikings fans that Flores was very, humble about this. He didn't take off his sunglasses and look at everyone in the eyes. He didn't deny anything, and he didn't apologize. So I do appreciate him kind of talking about this and saying some things. But man, that's not the best way to start in my eyes.
No, and I'm naturally, I try to be forgiving and try to see the good in everyone, but I'm trying to look at this and just be like, and poor you, right? Poor pity Brian Flores. That's just not the way. That's just not the way we have to go about it. I do think the thing that kind of makes me the most angry looking back at it is the fact that he just was coming back from that catastrophic injury. We were going through COVID, right? He wasn't even in the building the way it could have been, and to just keep shitting on him throughout that rookie season, I mean, I just don't get it. And again, it's DTA. I always say don't trust anyone, but sitting in those Flores things, I think even us as fans, man, we're sitting there looking at him like this is that guy that's changed the culture around here, and it turns out he was just a dick with a big ego.
Wasn't Tua's rookie season, two of like the moments was one him on the field FaceTiming with his parents when nobody else was around, which was the most wholesome thing. And wasn't there like an awkward like game ball where Tua actually tried to like go up to Flores and like give him the game ball as like just like a like you could tell he was trying to like, hey man, like let's be cool, we just won a game, and it was just the most like awkward thing ever.
Yeah, I think it's probably the first game they won together. They were probably celebrating, it was an important thing. And yeah, I mean, I just don't get it. But I guess nothing. If you're a head coach of a team, and even if you don't get the quarterback that you want, you still you owe it to the rest of that roster, right, to push through that and to be a coach, a man. And I thought Brian Flores was that guy. So, go ahead, Jake.
Flores had two players flanking him side by side when he was at the podium today. You defend the guys in your room. You defend the 53 men that you are coaching. That is absolutely it just is that respect me, but I couldn't respect my quarterback.
Didn't he have that weird ass? Sorry, didn't he have that weird ass like the five like tribal leaders or whatever? Like Jesse Davis was one of them. It was like his little like ring the group. And how much do you bet he wasn't talking to them and then having them go around telling the play? I don't know, man. It was just a weird time. And again, at one point we thought it was so promising, but I'll never forget, Jake, you just saying we felt this way about Adam Gay. We felt this way about different coaches before. Let's let this play out. And next thing you know, Brian Flores is on his way.
One more thing from Flores, I've had a lot of great relationships over my 21-year career. Players, coaches, personnel, equipment, people in the kitchen. I mean, I really, across the board, I've had a lot of great relationships. Listen, the key here isn't to have great relationships. It's to have relationships. You're not going to be buddy-buddy with everyone. I think that's such an important point of life. But being able to work with someone is one of the most impressive skills you can have as a growing adult. Brian Flores failed at that, and I think he mentioned that. But the part that I think bothered me is that Flores was asked if he would want to work it out with Tua personally. Flores said, maybe if that time arises or is available, I'm certainly open to that, but I got a lot of other things going on too, as he does. Dude, he went on a podcast and he said, oh, you should ask Tua about our relationship. Do you think that didn't get back to Tua and spark this entire thing where Tua just needed 2 minutes? That's also the kicker. This was the last question Le Batard asked. He was walking out the door. So, like, this wasn't a whole, like, 15, 20 minutes just, like, burning down Brian Flores. Just like Flores was asked on a podcast, can you talk about your relationship with Tua Tagovailoa? Oh, ask Tua. We had a great relationship. That's exactly what happened here, man.
Sounds like you walked out of the studios with the double bird salute, and that was the end of that interview.
Oh, God, dude. But I just think about how frustrating those teams were, and like the 1-7 start, and I'm just gonna, the loss to Jacksonville and the Deshaun Watson and the losing like 4 offensive coordinators, Patrick Grant. Like, have you noticed over the last 4 years when you're just watching a broadcast and it's like, it's cool, but like once in a while you'll see like someone related to the Dolphins and a former coach or whatever. Up and coming defensive coordinator Patrick Graham this, Patrick Graham this. He's the next genius. Dude, he was in Miami for 1 year and left, and then it was the Josh Boyer show for 3 years. We had 4 different offensive coordinators. Like, God, man, there was, and I think that's what makes being a Dolphin fan so frustrated. It's one thing to go out and lose football games. It's one thing to go out there and suck. But when there's just that disorganization, there's these issues happening behind the scenes, there's coaches not getting along, there's refs not calling it when Ben Roethlisberger fumbles at the goal line. It's just, if we're going to lose, if we're going to be credited as being that team that hasn't won a playoff game in 20 years, we can wear that, we can accept that. But it's just these scenarios, man, where there's more at play, where it's like, we just kind of want to call this out for being a little messed up. Like, I think that's where the pain of a Dolphin fan is currently.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that offensive coordinator thing, because I mean, didn't Jim Caldwell start out as like a special assistant at the beginning? He quit. I believe Chan Gailey even said I think Chan Gailey even had like a quote where he was like, "I won't come back and do that again" or something. So, and his last season we had the 3-headed human centipede, wasn't it? Like Stootsville, Gotsey, and whoever the other one was. I can't remember, Charlie Fry or something like that. But yeah, so man, again, I'm glad it's over. I'm glad the Dolphins lucked into Mike McDaniel. Thank God he wasn't our offense coordinator when the Dolphins first reached out, right? Because then he would have been with Brian Flores. That would absolutely rip that relationship apart, and we'd be on to the next guy. So it all worked out for the Dolphins. As of now, I'm saying that, I should knock on wood, but it's all works out as we've always imagined.
Josh, I don't know if you saw this, but the Dolphins signed maybe the coolest name in history. Xander Horvath is now the backup fullback on the Miami Dolphins.
Who was that?
Xander Horvath. So as the Dolphins are dealing with some injuries here, they signed Xander Horvath and Anthony McFarland Jr., who's hopped around the NFL over the last couple of years. I wouldn't panic too much about this. The Dolphins also released Salvon Ahmed after his run with the franchise over a few years stretch. I wish him the best moving forward. But Josh, the Dolphins are trying to figure things out at running back, and I think this is more of a preseason Game 3 issue than it is a regular season issue, because we actually got some good news. Chris Brooks, who left preseason Game 2 against the Commanders early, I think you could even hear him on the broadcast screaming it. I thought you could hear him like yell or something, thought it might be a shoulder or an arm injury. He's in concussion protocol. He should be back, hopefully relatively soon. Jalen Wright dealing with a minor injury. So if you guys have seen the Dolphins make a couple of roster moves in the last couple of days, a Xander Horvath, if you will, it just kind of seems like they want some guys who can carry the ball in the final preseason game, especially when you see that Jaquan Burton had to carry the ball 3 times last week.
Yeah, I think you're right, Jake. These are just, throwing a dart at some of these acorns that, maybe they show something. Anthony McFarland Jr., I know that's the guy that I had in, a deep dynasty league. I probably drafted in one of those late rookie rounds, so maybe something comes of that. But it does sound like a lot of these players who, have just recently got banged up, it sounds like they're trajecting towards the right way. And, again, we have 2 weeks before the season starts, roughly 3, I guess we're closer to, but it's right around the corner, man. So I hope this roster gets healthy. Hope we get to see Jalen Wright out there, some of these other guys. But Xander Horvath, that's a great name, man.
Head coach Mike McDaniel mentioned that this week is pretty important for backup quarterbacks Mike White and Skylar Thompson. Josh, when we were doing this show last preseason, was it a quarterback competition between Thompson and White, or was the impression kind of that Mike White was the backup? I think that's what it was, but please correct me if I'm wrong.
That was that's how it felt, at least from our outside perspective, right? As soon as they signed him, it was no longer Skylar Thompson, QB2. It immediately became Mike White, but things are changing this offseason.
It really feels that way. So last game, Mike White completed 11 of 20 attempts for 116 yards. He also took 3 sacks. Skylar Thompson, 8 of 15 for 61 yards. Josh, these two guys are going to get a lot of work this weekend. I don't think we're going to learn too much, though. I think we know what to expect out of guys like Mike White, Skylar Thompson. So keep it simple for you. Are you comfortable with having one of these guys backing up Tua to begin the year, or are you going to go chase him?
Comfortable. I think at this point, I think we talked about another pod. At this point, the breaking case of emergency's got to be Tom Brady. If his season's going down the shitter, if we have to rely on Skylar Thompson or Mike White, so I guess I'm not comfortable with it, but I think we're gonna have to deal with it, right? We have to become okay with it. Content, I guess, is the word. I am intrigued to see how this thing unravels, though, because I think week 1 we sat here and I think we gave the upper edge to maybe Skylar Thompson. Week 2, I think I gave the upper edge maybe to Mike White. Now we're going into the final game, week 3, both of them having a chance for 2 quarters. So do they look at this thing as, we have already invested time in Skylar Thompson, let's bring him back, he might be cheaper than Mike White? Or do they look at Mike White as a guy who, like we said, Jets fans are wearing shirts, started for him at one point, and maybe we need that experience over what we have with Skylar? So I don't know, man. I would be kicking the tires on one of those, I saw, was it Omar Kelly said Zach Wilson? I've heard people say Trey Lance. Like, that's that project I want, but then you have no confidence in them coming in. So I don't even know what I'm saying. Just ignore that. It's because they wear visors and have sleeves and things like that. That's the only reason I mentioned them.
I like the Dolphins going after a project, but a project and I think a backup quarterback are two different things for what the Dolphins need right now. I don't think I'd really take Zach Wilson coming in right now and being better than Skylar Thompson. I think it'd be kind of a wash, and I do think we're underestimating the importance of just having these reps in the Mike McDaniel system. I still keep seeing people saying, Ryan Tannehill. No, I just don't think it's a fit for the system. He did so well in that play action, run first scheme that the Titans ran. It's not a fit. It's not a fit. Then you have Brian Hoyer, AJ McCarron, Trevor Siemian. Josh, I don't know if half those guys are retired, so I don't know if they're really going to kick the tires on anyone else. It just seems like if the Dolphins are going to have to play a second quarterback, it's going to have to be Thompson or White. I just don't think there's a scenario where anyone else really makes sense unless everybody gets injured. I hope that does.
Yeah. Let's just hope it's Tua for another, 18, 19, 20 games or whatever it is. Let's just hope he rides out the entire season. But this battle between Mike White and Skylar Thompson isn't unanswered, and we're going to see it all unfold this week, right? I don't know are they going to keep 3? I think we speculated that on before, but I don't know, man. I think right now it could just be, we'll see.
Another position group, Josh, where the battle is heating up. Storm Duck continues to dominate for the Miami Dolphins secondary, and honestly, man, it's a position group that's just looked great in general. Duck was targeted 3 more times against the Commanders. He had a pass breakup. He's been targeted 8 times this preseason, and he's only allowed 1 reception, an 86 PFF grade. It was a bummer that Ethan Bonner, who's been having an absolutely outstanding training camp, he's in concussion protocol, so he wasn't out there last week. Hopefully we can see him return in time to play this weekend, because I think, man, I go back to what I said last week, these cornerback battles are the most fun to watch, because just sitting there watching the game without, replaying it and just grinding the film, it's the easiest battles to see. It's easy to say, hey, we see the cornerback doing this, means he didn't throw a completion. That's pretty simple.
Yeah, and you got to like what we see out of Storm Duck, right? You mentioned we joke about his name and just seeing him out there making plays, and it's just the entire secondary. I think coming into this preseason, we knew they were not going to really use Jalen Ramsey much. We haven't really seen Javon Holland. Jordan Poyer's been on the shelf as well. So to see them play as well as they have, learning a new system, you can see the movement in the secondary. It looks like a lot of these guys almost, have been in this system a lot longer than maybe they have. Marcus May just came around. You said he had 7 tackles. He was a little bit all over the field. We've seen Cam Smith make plays. He looked a lot more comfortable than we've seen in years past. Yeah, we didn't see any double moves, right? We didn't see him get beat or anything like that. Elijah Campbell, you had written down here, played well. So that secondary has a bunch of guys that are depth pieces. Maybe Storm Duck not so much. He might eventually come on as a dime, or Cam Smith as well. But a lot of these depth pieces are really stepping up and making a name for themselves. Patrick Morris is another one. I mean, you need a safety to step up. He's been all over the field these last few games. So love to see it. Absolutely love to see it.
Cam Smith is week to week what people are speculating is a hamstring injury. He gave up plays that were learning lessons and then made plays. There was some growth there, Mike McDaniel said. He was targeted 6 times in coverage, allowing 4 receptions for 35 yards, 18 of those coming as yak. He gave up a long of 20, but also had 4 tackles. Josh, he didn't get lost in the secondary. You mentioned it. No double moves. Nothing we're going to throw in his direction, and it's an instant win. He fought. He gained confidence. That was absolutely awesome to see. Another position group, Mr. Houts. How are we feeling about these edge rushers? Chop Robinson, Mo Kamara both made their presence felt with tackles for a loss. Quentin Bell's getting some praise for what he does on special teams and just a sound edge setter. So who is standing out to you in this group?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to see what, Mo Kamara, what he did this past week. He was coming on, he looked feisty, and we said time and time again that we could see him ending this, rookie season or any season, honestly, maybe with a higher sack number. He kind of fits that. He just seems like he's going to get those sacks. Maybe you see, maybe we see Chop Robinson doing more of that pressure stuff that we saw, and opening things up for other guys because he exploded off the ball. So it's hard not to get excited about those rookies. But Quentin Bell, I mean, we continue to hear how he can set the edge and do things like that. For me, I'm still intrigued to see what happens with Jalen Phillips, right? As no crap as that sounds. I mean, I think I saw Anthony Weaver say today he wouldn't count him out of anything. And, who knows what that could mean. So the fact that he's, exceeding expectations, just coming back from that catastrophic injury, it's great to see. So I'm excited about the entire edge. I'm excited about this entire defense, as cliche as that sounds, because it's just, you're seeing it out there. It just seems like it's so different. I don't think we have anything about Channing Tindall in here, but I want to throw a Channing Tindall out here. Anthony Weaver would say he's so proud of him for what he's become. So are we going to see Channing Tindall on the 53-man roster? I know he's an inside linebacker, but I just had to give him his flowers. Sorry, Jake.
No, man, that actually brings up an interesting point, because an underrated topic is that Anthony Walker hasn't been on the field at all. Former Cleveland Browns team captain at linebacker, who I thought I'd be able to make some noise as a thumper as well for this team. He hasn't been practicing for a while. So, dude, I wonder. I think that might be an interesting fight. Channing Tindall, maybe Curtis Bolton going at it. Bolton's been really sound in the middle of the defense. I think he led the team. He tied McMorris in tackles a couple weeks ago. So that might be one of the most important fights, Josh, I think, when we're looking ahead to Friday. Bolton versus Tindall could be one worth watching.
Hey, come on, Tindall. We're going to keep both of them and get rid of Duke Riley and that rap album? I'm just kidding.
Something I do want to mention, because I did have a note here that Jalen Phillips does sound like he'll be back for Jacksonville. They're going to listen to his body. They're taking it slow, but it kind of seems like they're leaning that way if he's already in full pads. Josh, I'm kind of liking Miami as like a survivor pick week 1. Is that bad to be saying on August 20th? I think back to that game in London. I think the Dolphins want some revenge, and I think that this Jacksonville team hasn't seen the Miami Dolphins with the speed, where I do think that'll be a quick punch in the mouth early. Look at what happened to the Chargers last year, week 1, right? Mike Davis was talking all this junk, and all of a sudden he was cooked like 5 different plays.
Yeah, and you can only imagine what new wrinkles Mike McDaniel and the Dolphins are going to throw at him, right? Someone, I think it was Nate Tice, I believe he used to work for The Athletic, not sure where he's at now, but he showed how they were using, a quick little Julian Hill motion that's kind of set up a counter. So it's crazy just to see the intricacies that, Mike McDaniel's unraveling and utilizing. So, yeah, I can see us absolutely punching the Jags in the mouth. I just hoped – I missed that Jalen Phillips thing, so I hope he's out there because we owe them. We definitely do. I think was it not Urban Meyer's only win? Come on, man.
I've talked about that too much. And yeah, the Jalen Phillips, it's like a hopeful thing. There's nothing confirmed there, but that kind of just feels like where it's trending based on everything we've been reading. As we wind down here, Josh, we wanted to end the podcast with one more topic. Let's go through some of the rookies who we think are going to have the biggest impact on the 2024 Miami Dolphins. So we were just talking a little Chop Robinson, talking a little Mo Kamara. So, Josh, on the defensive side of the football, who do you think is going to play the most snaps as a rookie for the Miami Dolphins?
I'll go with Chop Robinson. Let's go with Chop Robinson. I think he will. I think he's going to be that niche. He's going to be that third down pass rusher, things like that. They might use him in special occasions. So I think I'm going to go with that. I almost said Storm Duck. He might be out there a lot with how some of these teams play. Use 3 receivers, 4 receivers, things like that. But I'll go with Chop Robinson and probably be wrong, but I'm okay with that.
I like the idea of Chop Robinson. My only worry is he did kind of struggle against the run. We saw that last week against the Commanders. And man, I still think you brought up such a great point about how Jalen Phillips really even had to master being a three-down player, and we look at the freak he is. So I do wonder if the Dolphins are going to take it a little slow, and especially on rushing downs, that might be like annual Emmanuel Agba's music. So that might just kind of limit his opportunities there. Storm Duck was another one, man, and I was kind of going, Storm Duck. The Dolphins actually have a couple cornerbacks looking to make the roster. Jason Maitre, am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, Jason Maitre and Isaiah Johnson too, right? Isaiah Johnson's been making plays as well.
So I could really see a scenario, man, where we see a couple of these young cornerbacks find their moments to jump in and make plays. I'm going to go Patrick Morris. I am going to ride this ship into the night because just seeing him just always be around the football. We saw Marcus May play for a half last week. I think there is room for a third safety to come in there, whether it's a couple guys that are banged up, so we need to get someone more involved, or even just from the play. I thought Patrick Morris played really well. I think can be a special teams contributor. That to me might be a little bit of a wild card where it sounds spooky that a sixth-round rookie could be the one who plays the most snaps for this Dolphins defense, but they do have depth elsewhere. Maybe you could see a Curtis Bolton we were talking about jump in and play linebacker because of injuries, but that's one I could see as a little bit of a wild card.
Yeah, I think that's great. Like I said, I would have no problem being wrong. And if I'm wrong with Patrick Morris out there, looking like that preseason stud, translating that to the regular season and beyond, I'd be all for that. So yeah, man, I think that might be more of a dark horse than mine. I think that's a lot more going shooting out there, and I would love to see that happen. Almost even more so than a Chop Robinson, because then that means you found another late round safety that's a stud and can do a little bit of everything.
What is that? Is that the Rashad Jones music I hear out in the distance?
Oh, it is. Yep.
Flipping the coin, going to offense. Josh, where do we even begin? Offense?
Yeah.
It can't be Malik Washington, right? It's definitely not Malik Washington. I say where do
It,
we begin, and there's a name. There's a name that just smacked me over the head. So you can go ahead and say it.
no, you got it. Who are you going to say? Because I might have somebody different. Who's your guy?
Same person.
I was gonna say Patrick Paul. You were yeah, I know where you're going. I was gonna say Patrick Paul, but I don't know that I believe that. It's got to be Jalen Wright, right?
Gotta be
Is
Jalen.
yeah, I had Jalen Wright written down. It has to be. It has to be him. I think he's gonna. We see him being that stud. He can run between the tackles, do a little bit of everything. And I think Achan. We talked about who's going to step up with River Cracraft and things like that. We didn't even mention him going out there and being that pass catcher, right? He's probably going to be split out wide at times. So Jalen Wright, man, running between the tackles, I'm all for it. So we'll go with Jalen Wright. I hope it's not Patrick Paul. I don't even know why I would have speak that into existence, because I think Kendall Lamb might even be slotted ahead of him if push comes to shoves. Push comes to shove. So we'll go with Jalen Wright. Malik Washington, though, could also trickle his way in there.
Yeah, we saw the Dolphins using a lot of three wide receiver sets this preseason, and that's not necessarily always been their forte. They love having two running backs on the field together. That's kind of been their thing. So you do wonder, Josh, if that's going to be the switch. We talk about using the tight ends in motion. I'd love for the Dolphins to just come out and the offense looks entirely different. We just have no idea what to expect. But just mentioning the fact that the Dolphins love to rotate these players out, they love to have two running backs on the field, it's really, really hard not to say Jalen Wright. He's good in pass protection. I think that was maybe the player I was most disappointed that didn't play last week just because he was so electric to watch. I think there was one play that was going to get blown up in the backfield, and he shimmied all the way back around to turn into a nice 15-yard gain. Patrick Paul, I think there would have been a debate for, but I'm going to say that I might have kind of predicted this one. It kind of seems like what they're doing. Kendall Lamb started at left tackle for the Dolphins, and then Paul came in. I do wonder if, God, man, it'd be so cool to see Teron Armstead out there eating cornerbacks and safeties for 17 games. Don't get me wrong. But I think if the Dolphins are forced to play a second left tackle early in the season, I think it could be a Kendall Lamb, but give it like a bye week. Treat it like a rookie quarterback in the sense where maybe you don't throw him into the fire right away, but right after the bye week or something like that, you could see him take over instead of Lamb. I could see that being the project for those guys.
Yeah, I want to make sure we continue to speak it into existence. I think it's the way that, is it Trent Williams, the way that the San Francisco 49ers sometimes line him up as that tight end spot? I mean, we continue to speak that into existence. Patrick Paul next to Teron Armstead in those heavy sets. I mean, so he probably won't have as many snaps, but I'm going to pretend that's what I was thinking with that. So, him coming in relief duty, but also as that, sixth tight end, just eating people up. He did get beat pretty bad though this past week, so I think a lot of people are, now back down to earth on Patrick Paul. But I can't get over that face mask, man. Dude looks like he just beats the shit out of Batman for a living.
That'd be the greatest job to have. If you had to pick an undrafted rookie offensive lineman.
Undrafted rookie offensive lineman, would that be Andrew Meyer? Is that the? I'm hoping he sticks out. I hope, because we need that center, man. I wrote down, that's why you said where do we start here, because I have this whole like little rant about the offensive line and stuff that had nothing to do with this podcast. So it'd be nice to have Andrew Meyer step up and be a versatile piece and maybe could play other positions, but be that legit center that could come in and maybe not have to move Liam away from his guard spot, which we're just hoping he can show he belongs at either of them.
Hi, I'm Jake. I'm host of another Dolphins podcast, first-time interviewer of Josh Houts. Josh, I wanted to ask you for your thoughts on the Miami Dolphins offensive line and if that involved a little bit of a rant. The floor is yours.
I'm queasy. That's is that? Can I just say I'm queasy with it?
What do you mean? Is it the fact that today Connor Williams, it was pretty much announced that he'll be ready for the start of the season, and we have Aaron Brewer, who maybe he won't play opening day? Is that why you're queasy? Because Connor Williams was being talked about as someone who had a potentially career-ending injury, someone who has worked his entire ass off to come back, and I don't want this to be shade at Aaron Brewer, but you're not a little queasy just because he's ready to play and the Dolphins have a center that we know nothing about. He's played center for 1 year in his entire career, and he's got an unknown hand injury. Is that why?
Yes.
It's the fact the Dolphins had an offensive left guard last year who didn't allow a single sack in 700 snaps, so they re-signed him this offseason thinking he'll be healthy, he'll be good to go, and yet he also hasn't practiced yet, and we have no idea who's going to start at left guard. Is it that?
Yeah.
Is it because... No, I'm not going to get too much on Liam Eichenberg. In Liam Eichenberg, we trust Ish. We understand it is what it is with him, but we got to trust him, man.
That's all we can do. And I think that's what my entire rant's about. Just, I don't know that I feel comfortable with Liam at centers. Please, God, please let this all work out. In Butch Berry, we trust. In Liam, we trust Ish. Save us. Somebody save us.
And Sean Harlow, that's the thing, too. The Dolphins did actually go out and add free agent offensive linemen. There was that one practice when the sky was falling because nobody could snap the football. They go out, they sign Sean Harlow, bounced around the league a little bit. He was looking pretty good. He's, I believe, is done for the year, too. So the Dolphins, I think, are going to go out, hopefully still try to add an offensive lineman because I'm right there with you, man. And then maybe you could push up Jack Driscoll and he's good to go out right guard, but only time's going to tell him that one, man. Only time's going to tell, but till then we're just going to be chugging Pepto-Bismol.
Hoping we see Aaron Brewer. That's what that's just come back, Aaron Brewer. You're supposed to be, but then I go back to Baldy, man. It just can't win. It's just these voices in my head, man, telling me offensive line, no bueno.
What a perfect way to end the podcast. That is it. That is all the time we have today on another Dolphins podcast. Thank you all so much for joining us. The fact that football's back, man, this is so much fun. We love talking with you guys all year round, but the fact that we have games, dude, Josh, he cooked out a tweet today, a highlight reel in an hour. It's so cool to have football back. It's so cool to be here talking with you guys. I'd love to hear from you guys. Be sure to send your questions to another Dolphins podcast at gmail.com. You can even message them on YouTube, 560WQAM. I do go through those comments. All right. Thank you all. Go enjoy the rest of your week. We will be back before the week ends with another 53-man roster prediction with Kat, so stay tuned for that. But now I'm really done. Fins up.
Fins up.